news. At the
Yes. You can
Here?
go ahead and
Okay.
proceed right there.
Over there, okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Good
How are
afternoon.
you?
Hi. All right, so we're going to get started. Today's briefing will be on the record, and we're also recording it and on camera. Today's briefing is Energy Port of the Americas, Economic Development, International Investment, and Cross-Border Cooperation in Corpus Christi. These are our briefers. This is John Larue. He is the Executive Director of the Port of Corpus Christi. And this is Tommy Kurtz. He's the Vice President of Business and Strategic Development for the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll start with, they'll give their presentation, and then at the end, there'll be time for you to ask questions. We might also have time for one-on-ones at the end. For those who have not already reserved them, for those who have, you'll definitely get time to do that. And then when you ask questions, just be sure to state your name and the organization you're affiliated with. And with that,
Okay,
I'll turn it over
thank
to
you.
you. You're welcome.
Good afternoon. Here, I'll
Yeah.
give you John LaRue.
I'll go this side. Hi, Tommy Kurtz.
beginning, nice to meet you.
James,
What's
okay.
my beginning?
Beginning,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Hi. Jeff is okay? Yeah. Huh? Thank you.
John LaRue.
Hi, Ian Britt.
Hi, Ian. Tommy Kurtz. How you
Nice to
doing?
meet you. I'm with Fuji Television.
Fuji, okay, great. Okay. Hi. Hi.
Oh, hi.
John
Tommy
LaRue.
Kurtz. Hi.
John
Germany,
Kurtz.
okay, okay.
NYFPC.
Tommy Kurtz.
Nice to see you.
Okay. It's okay, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Hi,
I'm Russian.
Thank you,
Voice
thank
of
you.
America.
Yes.
We've met
There you
before.
are.
Yeah, good seeing you, good seeing you again.
Here's my card. Thank you. Yeah, I
Jim,
remember you.
on,
Your last year.
I'll, once you talk, I'll advance. How's
Okay,
that?
and then you jump in
Yeah,
where
sure,
you
sure.
think appropriate.
All right, let's do.
Okay, well, we'll get started, and if I'm going too fast or anything like that, tell me to slow down. I'll slow
It's always
down.
my
I'll try to
problem.
go through the more bureaucratic and government slides quickly. I'm sure we can provide you with a copy of this. Or anybody, yeah, we'll give you a copy, so if you want, you don't have to take notes on all of it, but if you want a copy, we can provide that. Okay, so that's who we are. This is where Corpus Christi is located. We're on the Gulf of Mexico, kind of halfway between Houston and the Mexican border, 8th largest city in Texas, 6th largest port in the U.S. We label ourselves the Energy Port of the Americas because we do a lot of energy. That's our principal focus is oil, gas, wind, energy-related activities. We're not a container port. We don't do a lot of general cargo. We do a lot of what's called project cargo, so heavy lift pieces, things that are sort of specialty, but not the traditional container type of operation that a lot of ports do. Population 450,000 roughly for the region, so not a very large population and a lot of open space. This is a picture from December 31st of 2015, and if it's okay, I'm going to take my coat off because it's a little warm. I see some of you don't have one on, so I don't feel bad doing that. And this was the first ship of U.S. export crude oil since the 1970s. In 1973, the U.S. imposed an embargo on the U.S. exporting oil because we were in an embargo with the Arab countries. Back in '73, with the war, there was the Arab countries stopped selling oil to the United States, so the United States didn't have enough oil. So they basically told the oil industry in the U.S., you can't export any oil, we need it all. And that stayed in effect for over 40 years when it didn't need to be. That issue was long resolved, but things are hard to change, as we know in government sometimes. But in December of 2015, that law was changed, and that's the very first vessel with export crude left our port. So that's been a big change in the U.S. and a big change for us in our export of crude.
Sorry, wrong one. There we go.
There we go. I won't go through this. This just discusses who we are. We're a creature of the state of Texas. Texas is one of the 50 U.S. states, as you all know. So we were founded in 1926, although there was a port in that location from the 1500s when the Spanish first came to Corpus Christi. But the official port was not founded until 1926. So we're just a little over 90 years old, which isn't very old by the standards of some of your countries. And we're one of the major economic engines for South Texas, which is where we are, and Corpus Christi. Other ones being we have a number of military bases, both Navy and Army. In tourism, we have a lot of fishing, a lot of what's called ecotourism, people with bird watching and dolphin watching and just everything related to the water, as you might expect. So we have to coexist. While we're an industrial port, we have to coexist in an environmentally friendly way with all the other activities that use the water. These are some of our major customers, and I won't go through them, but a lot of Fortune 500 companies in the U.S., some international companies. You want to point some out? You can see Siemens on there, which is German. The one up at the top next to Valero is a company, M&G, which is an Italian company. They make PET, which is the plastics and resins used for making these bottles. TPCO on the second line to the, is it to the right on your screen? It's to the right on
The
my
right
screen.
second.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
want to be sure I'm looking
Yeah.
at a screen
We're on
behind.
second to right.
That's a Chinese company. They make oil and gas pipes. So just a number of companies from all, not just the U.S., but international.
Voestalpine.
Voestalpine, which is an Austrian
Mhm.
steel maker.
Air Liquide's French too.
This shows since the crude opened, we're now shipping all over the world, Europe, Africa, Asia. Just depends. It's a competitive market, and people buy as they buy, whatever the product may be in a commodity base, wherever the product that they need is of the quality that they need and the price is right. And you can see some of the countries that we've sold crude to, and that's increasing every month. These are the top trading partners that we have by country. So you can see some of those there, and I again will provide you with this list. I won't list and read all of those. That would probably put you to sleep. Our trade with Mexico is one of our principal markets. Obviously, we're only 2.5 miles from the border with Mexico, so
2.5 hours.
we're
2.5 hours.
hours. I mean, we're closer to some of the major cities in Mexico than we are to like Dallas in Texas. So Mexico is a very important trading partner for obviously for the U.S., but also for Corpus Christi. This shows one of the ways, besides moving cargo by water and by train and by truck, one of the principal ways in the U.S. to move liquid bulk products and natural gas is by pipeline. And it's a very safe way to do it. It's a very efficient way, very inexpensive. Once you invest, it's a heavy capital investment, but it's also, once you do it, very effective. And I'll show you, I can walk up here, it's easier than look at that. This dotted line here, it comes down, and like that is a brand new pipeline. That's a natural gas pipeline that's being built by a Canadian company. So it's really a NAFTA project. It's a Canadian company building a project in the United States, starting in the United States, going through the United States by land, out into the Gulf of Mexico, and then back into Mexico to supply natural gas to Mexico.
Is that the Keystone you're referring
to? No, the Keystone is oil. This is just a natural gas, and it's very large. It's 40 inches in diameter, so huge amount of natural gas. and it's under construction right now. It costs $2 billion. They just started construction. They're moving all the pipe through our port, so we get some immediate economic benefit from it.
Which company is it?
It's a company called Enbridge, Enbridge.
It's public, it's huge, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was originally started by a company called Spectra, but Spectra was bought out by Enbridge, so it's now Enbridge. This shows the port. The dark blue line is our ship channel. So the ship channel is, I should have put it in meters, I apologize, but it's 45 feet. You're all probably pretty good being here in the U.S. at converting feet to meters. So it's 45 feet deep, and that is about 30 miles long, that channel, so just to give you some perspective. One of the key things we're doing right now is deepening that channel from 45 to 52 to take advantage of some of the new opportunities, especially in the energy field. The deeper you have, the larger ships you can bring in. So that will bring us in line with the new Panama Canal. The new canal is 51 feet deep, so we will be 52 feet, so we will be within the limits of the canal. So that will help us with exports and import, but we're mainly an export port, mainly exports to Asia for the canal. This shows our logistics system, both in rail and highway and pipelines. We already talked about pipelines. The rail, we have 3 railroads that come in and they connect into Mexico and into Canada, and we move a lot of product by rail. And the highway system, you can also see, it's not very congested. We're not like Houston or Dallas or what we have outside the doors here with New York. It's fairly open in South Texas, so it's easy to move things by truck. And the final one is waterway. That's an inland waterway system. So in the United States, not only do we have the deep water ports like ours that are 45 feet, but this line
Red.
runs the red line and then up like these, all these blue lines. That's a barge canal. So that's only 12 feet deep, but you can move product from, as you can see on that, from Corpus Christi all the way up to the Canadian border, all the way to Pennsylvania. And a lot of, especially liquid and dry bulk products move that way. It's very, again, very safe. You don't have to put it on highways. It's more environmentally friendly. You're not polluting the air because you're not running trucks. And it saves money. You can get a lot more in a barge than you can in a truck.
You're talking about maybe about the pipelines, maybe?
Yeah, the pipeline system you can see there. See it back there? That shows just in Texas, we talked before about natural gas. This is the oil, mainly the oil pipeline system that is connecting our port to where what are called the shale formations in Texas, and that's what's changed a lot of the port's target markets. We now have these formations of shale where oil is buried in the shale, and they've figured out how to get the oil out of there, and they have only done that really in a very economical way in the last 10 years. So now they're able to pull a lot more oil out of what were formations that they thought they really couldn't use anymore. And it's really been a tremendous advantage for us as a port in a region.
And the rail, who runs the rail?
The rail are all privately owned. There's 3 in our port. There's 3 companies. Actually, in the U.S., it's really right now. There's really 4 major rails. There's 2 on the east of the Mississippi and 2 west. The 2 east are Norfolk Southern and CSX, and you'll see those trains around here. If you see a rail, that's what you'll see. There are other railroads, but the giants are those 2. West of the Mississippi, it's Union Pacific and a company called Burlington Northern Santa Fe. So we have both of those in Corpus Christi, plus we have a third one, which is called Kansas City Southern. Kansas City is important because they're a principal railroad into Mexico. This is a good slide, but it's very busy, and I won't try to read all those bubbles. But those are all the companies that have invested in about the last 5 or 6 years in our region. And the total amount of investment is over $50 billion, which is, I mean, we probably, up until 2011, if we went back 10 years before that, we'd be lucky if we had $5 billion. So the change in the last, say, 6 or 7 years for our port has been dramatic, and for our region. And most of this investment is very capital intensive. By that I mean they're building major facilities that cost billions of dollars. And the good thing for us is they're building them. It's not something they can take away. So if you do a container business and you build a container terminal, the container lines can come and they'll make some investment, but they can pack up and leave after 5 or 6 years. They really don't have that major capital investment usually in the port. The same with cruise ships. While some areas have cruise terminals, usually they're publicly owned. And if the cruise lines want to move around, they can give the port notice, and in 2 years they can pack up and move. But these companies are building their own facilities, and that makes a big difference. Anyway, tremendous investment in our region.
And this includes the recent $10 billion announcement by ExxonMobil on the ethane cracker, ethylene manufacturing
Yes.
facility.
I think we have a slide on that.
Yep. Something that-
Yeah, here's some recent investments, and I'll start with First Alpini, which is up there in the right corner. And that, as I said, is an Austrian steel maker. They principally make products for the auto industry, the steel components. So for the European auto industry, if it's Mercedes or Volkswagen or Fiat or BMW or Audi, more than likely a good part of that car is manufactured by First Alpini. That's what their specialty is. They have a plant in Corpus Christi where they take iron ore and process it into an intermediate product. They don't make the actual auto parts there, but they make a product that they then ship back to Austria, where they process that into rolls of steel that are punched out and made into automobiles. So this just opened, this plant just opened in October of last year, so it's brand new. They're providing that manufactured process material to, obviously, back to Europe, shipping it through Rotterdam and Trieste, but also selling it in Mexico and selling it in the United States and eventually to other places in the world. Oxy Ingleside Energy Center, right below that, is I talked about the shale, and that's a facility that's major function is to export crude oil. So they would be, they're very interested in that deepening of the ship channel, because right now they're limited. A ship comes in and maybe the ship has a draft of 54 feet, but they can only use 45 feet of that. So they fill it to the max of the ship channel, 45 feet. If they went further, they'd run aground. But if we go to 52 feet, they get an extra 7 feet of cargo in that same ship. So they're paying the same money for the ship, same crew, everything's the same, except they get that much more product, which is, almost 20% more in the same vessel. So a tremendous opportunity for them and very efficient. And that facility just opened in the last year. M&G Resins, I mentioned at the beginning, is an Italian from Torino, Italy, and they manufacture PET, which is the substance used in making plastic bottles. It's used in making carpeting and a number of other projects. That will be the largest PET plant in the world, and it will be open at the end of this year, early first quarter of 18. Corpus Christi Cheniere Liquefaction is an LNG plant, and they will be exporting LNG throughout the world. They already have one plant in the Texas-Louisiana border that's up and running. This plant's about 60% complete and will be running about 2 years from now. And so LNG, as you know, Tokyo Bay gets several LNG ships every week, and I'm sure they'll be looking at Cheniere for competitive pricing. They've been selling Cheniere from their other facility has been selling into Asia, South America, and Europe, and they just started operations in their other plant within the last 9 months. So That plant alone costs $10 billion.
The Oxychem, yeah, first cracker.
Oh, I can't, yeah, in the
right-
middle.
right in the middle, yeah.
Okay, why
Yeah.
don't you do that one?
That's the first of the big crackers that were announced along the Gulf Coast, over, I think, $1.5 billion
You
total.
might explain what a cracker is.
Yeah, cracker is taking the ethane that's coming
It's
actually.
not saltines.
Yeah. It's basically taking the ethane that's coming out of the various shale plays, and then using that basically to break that down, which then is with other gases is made to make ethylene, which is the building blocks for plastics. So that's the first. There's actually another company, LyondellBasell, which is also has a smaller cracker operation, also in Corpus Christi. So this is like the second one, and with Exxon, that's the third project. Various differences on size, though. Well, I said this is about $1.5 billion. I think it's 400 million tons, something like that. I mean, for whatever it is. And then whereas the ExxonMobil is at $10 billion, I think 18 million, I think, compared to 4 million tons, I think, per year. I think so. It's a significant larger increase, and our area is actually being looked at for other type of ethylene manufacturing projects currently right now, in addition to Exxon. So you're going to see a lot more interest in not only just Corpus Christi, but along the Gulf Coast for other type projects, the building blocks for plastics, mainly to supply a global demand for more plastics, more packaging, as an increasing middle class obviously buys cars, buys food that's packaged in films and all that. So you'll see more of that, and iPhones and all the basic building blocks for there. So anyway, so that's and that was announced about 3 years ago, and that should be online by the Oxy's. Actually,
It's
online.
online.
Okay.
It's online.
Yeah, and Lyondell was in the beginning of
Both
this
came
year.
online.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so the M&G should be at the end of this year, and Cheniere should be 2019. So those projects, like I said, except for the Cheniere, are all will be up and running, or will be running by the end of this year. So
So M&G, is that a public company or what?
It's a privately owned
Yeah.
Italian
out of
company.
Italy. Yeah.
Oh, and the third one, which company was it again? So Exxon, M&G, and
Oxy,
Oxy.
yeah.
Go back.
Occidental Petroleum, a large publicly traded company in the U.S., and they have a subsidiary that is a chemical company, OxyChem.
And it was a joint venture with actually Mexico. So a lot of that product, a lot of those resins will be going actually to make PVC in Mexico. So hence our intertwined and
Yeah,
major trading
with
partner with
Mexico.
Mexico.
And Oxy is online? Is running?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
Up and running.
Just recent last few months. Yeah. But M&G is not. They're at the end of this year. So, and the LNG plant, like I said, that's 2019. So, but everything else is up and running.
Here's Tommy mentioned that at the beginning, ExxonMobil and SABIC. SABIC is Saudi Arabian Basic Industries, and that's a partnership between the two of them to build one of the largest steam cracker for ethane in the world. Don't want to say it's the largest, but the largest of its
World
type.
class. Okay.
It's they've bought 1,000 acres, and they're going through their permitting right now. But it's over a $10 billion investment. Will significantly improve the economic impact in our region, not just because of a plant that size, but it will employ over 800 people, very high salaries. Will move a lot of product by rail, so they will take this product, the pellets that they manufacture there, ship them by rail, mainly back to Houston or to Dallas. And what they do then is they take them out of the rail cars in these large super sacks, put them into smaller bags, put them into containers, send the containers to the east or west coast or to Houston, and then they go to Europe, Asia, or South America, where they're manufactured into everything we see
Multiple
sitting
parts,
around
yeah,
here,
yeah.
whether it's phones or plastic materials of any kind. That's the building block for it. So a very large project for us, an excellent project, and we're looking forward to. They've got to go through, as I said, their permitting process with the U.S. federal government and the state of Texas, and that may take them 12 to 15 months. So construction obviously will not start until they get their permits. So we're probably at least a year and a half. It'll probably be almost 2019 until we start that project, late 2018, early 2019.
They have a similar facility in the Baytown, yeah.
Yeah.
Texas. That's it.
And that's the basics. We'd be glad to go through in detail anything. I know we went through it quickly, but we didn't want to. We want to leave a lot of time for questions if you had them, and we know there are some people that wanted one-on-one interviews, so we thought it was, instead of, as I said, we'll provide you with a copy of the presentation. So even if you don't have particular questions right now, we will be glad if you have follow-up questions. You can email or call either of us, and we'll be glad to answer them at that time. Yes, sir.
Voice of America, Evgeny Maslov. You said it was a lot of development recently. Why is that? I mean, what drew all this investment?
A lot of it was from natural gas and oil. The change, as I mentioned, with the shale formations. So there's a lot of natural gas available right now in Texas. And most of those industries that we talked about use natural gas in their processing. They're either using it for heating, like the First Alpini, the steel manufacturer. What they do is take iron ore and superheat it with natural gas and take all the oxygen out. And then they're left with what looks like a charcoal briquette that is 95% pure iron as opposed to iron ore, which is 2/3 iron. It's easier for them to work with. It's more environmentally clean. So that's why they're there, because of the port, access to deep water, and a steady supply of natural gas. The same with Exxon. They need natural gas in their cracker. They take those products and they use them in their product. We didn't have a slide there, but we talked about TPCO, which is the Tianjin Pipe Company from the city of Tianjin in China, and they're building what's really a electric arc furnace, a steel making facility. So they will be using natural gas in that process. Same with M&G, the Italian resin. All of them are using natural gas and its derivatives in their manufacturing process. So that's why we had so much of that new investment around there. And obviously, Cheniere is taking natural gas and liquefying it and selling it. So natural gas is one of the real structural changes, the steady, important supply of natural gas. To show you how things change in just 15 years, the Cheniere plant was originally permitted by the U.S. government to import natural gas. They were going to import natural gas from the Middle East back in 2003, and that's what they were permitted for. And the U.S. thought it was going to run out of natural gas in 2030, so everybody was saying we've got to build these plants to import natural gas and make sure we have enough gas. And the price of natural gas was probably $12 to $15. Today it's $3 or $4. What happened with these shale formations, they found all this natural gas that they could get out of the ground. And now we have enough natural gas. Not only can we build LNG plants, but we can build pipelines to Mexico and sell them natural gas, so they have enough too. So gas was a big change for the region and attracting all these industries.
Price and then long-term, decade reliability, that the price and the quantity would be there. The other thing, a lot of these industries also use a lot of electricity. A lot of our generation in Texas is actually based on gas-fired electric plant generation. So that's also, so those two are big ingredients, I guess, in a lot of these facilities. So when you can monetize that over a larger period of time and estimate your cost without major, obviously variations, that makes us attractive. Us and really the Texas and the U.S. for that matter. So.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Well, Mexico is your biggest market,
Yes.
as you said.
Yeah.
How do you feel? I mean, you must be going through trepidations when you hear Trump talking, the president talking about revisiting NAFTA and imposing some kind of restrictions or renegotiating, to use a nicer word.
Well, I think most people in Mexico would agree that the original deal was done just as I mentioned with the gas, in a totally different time, in early 1990s, and signed in 1994. There's been a lot of changes in the world economy and in what's going on. So some renegotiation I don't think is out of the order. We don't expect, and I mean there's a lot of talk, but we don't expect that NAFTA is going to be eliminated. There may be talk like that, but we just don't see that happening. It could, but we're not expecting that, and we'll keep doing what we do.
What was your tonnage or volume of shipments from the port in 2016 compared with 2015?
We actually did more in 2015 than 16, mainly because we lost a lot of oil cargo because the price of oil dropped so much. So when oil in 2013 and through 15, the price of oil was $100, $70. Then in 2016, it dropped into the 20s. And production, just because they couldn't make money producing it, they just stopped producing oil. So we didn't have that export oil that I talked about and the ability to move oil around the United States and the world. It started to come back in 17. The first 3 months of 2017 have seen a ramp up of about 12%. So we're getting back to where we were in 2015, and we expect it will continue. The price of oil now is about $50, and people are able to make money and be productive at $50.
So in quantity, volume terms?
You can see up there right now, better than I can.
Yeah, you see it here?
Crude oil. No, that one's got.
You're sending this to us anyway?
Yeah, you're getting it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it.
Yes, sir.
Could you feature or list the provisions of NAFTA that really allows the port to prosper over decades, and something you don't want, to
Have changed?
have like Washington tweak, so that you'll continue.
That'd be difficult. It's just so intertwined in trade right now. I mean, things just kind of move. You can see that in the auto industry where parts and as much as people focus on Mexico, it's as much with Canada, with the U.S. and Canada. If you look at Detroit and its sister city of Windsor, which is right across from Detroit, there are trucks going back and forth between plants there all day. And there's no tariffs, there's no duties, it's just part of business. And so unwinding, pulling that apart would be very difficult. We don't do a lot of that. Our trade is more, as I said, energy related. And I think from Mexico's point of view, it's very important to continue the trade with the United States, both natural gas, crude oil. Mexico uses a lot of gasoline and diesel from the U.S. Their refineries do not produce enough, so they're taking product from the U.S. for that. So I'd be hard pressed to highlight any particular, but putting any kind of tariff on any of those items. If you put a tariff on gas or natural gas, that would obviously probably be a detriment.
So sometimes you read that some states get hit by the low oil price, and they write recession in Oklahoma and so on, and Houston is hit. And in your city, it's just different. Is it just because of the gas, or?
Well, our region suffered quite a bit in 2015 and 16 from the drop in the price of gas. There was not so much in our city, in Corpus Christi, but in the outlying regions, there was a lot of unemployment. A lot of businesses went bankrupt and went under. We were able to survive, one, because the port has a diversified base. It's not just moving oil, it's all the other products we named. And it's got some of the other things I talked about, the military component and the tourism component, and education and health are big parts of it. So we survived that that pretty well. Our unemployment rate fluctuated, maybe went up 1%.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher
Something
than,
like
than
that.
Texas. I mean, a lot of it really related to the oil and gas and services firms
Yeah.
that were displaced when oil dropped, when the price of oil dropped. But now that's starting to come back up. And like I said, this other, especially with the natural gas side, these other industries that we're attracting, that's starting to help in regards to a lot of those people being retrained to go in those industries that may have been out in the oil fields. The technology is getting better, obviously, and the exploration also in the shale plays. So you don't need as many people. You don't drive as many. You don't do as many dry wells,
Right.
dry areas, because the like even the last 2 or 3 years. So that's like any other industry. It's the technology. Usually you need less people with more. You have a better technology. So, but we've weathered the storm, and like I said, with all the various new foreign direct investment and other companies in the last 6 years, that's helping us attract other potential forms of other supply chain opportunities within those different sectors, whether it's steel, chemical related, other types of manufacturing.
And what's your unemployment rate roughly?
It's probably right now a little bit, probably at 5.5%.
Yeah, I was going to say 5.4,
Yeah,
5.5%.
Whereas Texas may be a little like 4.9, I think 4.9, 4, mid to upper 4s, whatever. And that fluctuates, but because a lot of the people actually that worked in let's say the Eagle Ford where there was downturn actually live in Corpus, and they'll drive an hour to those jobs anyway. So some of them have gone back to the oil fields. Those that haven't have been picked up either on construction on some of these projects or in some of the new projects that are coming online and working in the plants.
How is the safety? Because sometimes you read that cities that are close to the border are more dangerous, or is there? How is that?
There's been very little of that. I mean, I think that's what we call here one of those urban legends. There are safety and security issues on the Mexican side of the border. There's no
Sure.
question about that. There's been a fair amount of violence related to the drug cartels on the Mexican side, but it has not spilled over to the U.S. side. I was in Laredo, which is right on the border, last week. I go there maybe once every 2 or 3 months. I've never had a problem. There's not any of the problems that you see. And it's actually starting to come back and get better on the Mexican side. There used to be a lot of cross-border traffic, especially the U.S. side with U.S. citizens going to Mexico to in effect go to Laredo or Brownsville and walk across the border and shop and go to restaurants and entertainment almost disappeared with the violence that occurred. It's starting to, I've talked with the Chamber of Commerce and other people in Laredo, and it's starting to slowly come back. But it will take a while. But on the U.S. side, it really has not been much of a problem.
May I?
Yes.
Sure.
I work for a newspaper in Germany, and sorry for my delay.
Oh.
The current president has announced that he would like to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. So I would like to know what that means for your business and your harbor, and how the different companies or corporations would be influenced by either staying or withdrawing from it.
I don't know that I have an answer for that. I mean, we have all the rules and regulations from both the EPA and the state of Texas that we have to follow, and we continue to do that. We've had no change been directed at us, and as far as I know, there's been no change, no laws changed from Congress where any of that has changed. So I would say right now there's been no impact. In fact, some of the companies that we talk to will tell you that the requirements that they face in the U.S. are as stricter than they face in Europe. So I haven't seen it yet. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future, but right now there's been no impact.
Well, I think also to touch on that, so also our area is in attainment from an air quality standpoint. So we have actually, we're not like other cities in the Gulf Coast. We're below the 70 parts per billion in regards to attainment status. So that's one of the reasons why companies have been looking in our area, basically. But it's not like they can come to our area and then have us go over that threshold to go over the 70 parts per billion. They have to, when they apply for their permits, they have to put best technologies, best available, called BAT, in place so that they don't put our community back into, well, we never work this, but into non-attainment status. So they have to, if they come, put the most environmentally sensitive equipment in so that we remain in that clean air attainment status.
And second question concerning pipelines and fracking, which have been a very controversial issue in the last presidential campaign. And if the other candidate had won, there would probably much less fracking and much less pipelines, according to what she said. What would that have meant for your business?
Well, if I hadn't heard anything where there was going to be a pullback on fracking. I think it was more at the state level. You see, in fact, in New York, they don't allow fracking. So they don't have much development here where Pennsylvania does. But it was on the pipeline, Keystone Pipeline, and some of the others where the permits were not being issued. We were not affected directly by the Keystone Pipeline, but that would have affected the movement of oil from North Dakota into the Houston, Beaumont area. There's no question about that.
There.
A lot of the pipelines that we talked about there were inside the state, so they're really not under federal control. They're under control of the state of Texas, or if they're in Oklahoma, they're under the control of them. So we haven't. I didn't really expect that we would see any dramatic change, other than the Keystone pipelines and some other pipelines if they were proposed to move through a number of states. That's where the federal government gets involved. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, if nobody has any further questions, then this concludes our briefing, and we can move on to the one-on-one sessions. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Giving us
It's good to
the
see you.
Yeah.
If you have any follow-up, let us know. We'll be glad to answer them by email or phone or.
I would like to interview